Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. That is, my channel is simply called Discerning What is True. We're going to continue to do a particular book by a gentleman here. Simply the title of the book is simply called Kabbalah and Exodus. And we're going to go through what we call chapter 4 of this particular book called Birth of Consciousness. This is based upon Exodus chapter 2. So thank you for being here. Again, my channel is simply called Discerning What is True. My first name is Brant, B-R-A-N-T, Hunt, H-U-N-T. And so we're getting to the reading now. Let me just change something here real quick, make it easier for me to see and read. So again, the chapter is called simply Birth of Consciousness, Exodus 2. The parents of Moses, according to legend, were Amram, whose name means kindred of the high, and Jochebed, meaning divine splendor. Amram was as an especially upright man, even among the highest tribe of Levi. Because of this, he helped to bring the Shekinah, or divine presence, one stage closer to earth after it had retreated as a result of Adam's sin and the subsequent sins of his children to the seventh house, to the seventh heaven. Amram was the sixth in line after Abraham. Isaac, Jacob, Levi, and Kohath to draw the holy presence close to mankind. Again, his wife was no less distinguished that she was the daughter of Levi and was known for her spiritual quality. However, because of the enslavement, their first child was Miriam, which means bitterness, and their second was Aaron. Which is translated by some rabbis as, quote, woe unto this pregnancy, end quote. It is also read as the, quote, the mountaineer, end quote, and the, quote, enlightener, end quote. During the gestation of Moses, Amram and Miriam had dream visions concerning his future significance to Egypt and Israel. Seen in the individual progress, this is the hint within of inner changes afoot. Such intimidations might well occur in dreams that take on a symbolic meaning, and the man might see himself cutting bonds or escaping from prison. Talmudic legend says that when Moses was born, the whole house was filled with a radiance and that he could walk and speak at one day. This describes the emerging within an individual of a center of consciousness that has a degree of maturity over and above the rest of the being. In order to protect Moses from being killed, Jochebed built the child a ark for its preservation and floated upon the waters to see what providence would do. Here we see the beginning of trust in relation to matters of the spirit. It's one of the prerequisites in inner work to allow the spirit to lead the life towards its real purpose, as heaven would have it. Pharaoh's daughter saw him as she bathed in the Nile in order to cleanse herself of leprosy engendered by idol worship. Thus, one of the few Egyptians who valued the inner life saw the child and saved it. There is always one part of the ego which recognizes that the natural world only brings decay and death, and perceives something of another higher world that must be cherished. That's correct. It must be. Most people are not aware that they are spirit. This preserving and developing of Moses' principle, whose name means drawn from water, end quote, or the symbolic element representing the fluidity of the psyche. Earth equals Assyria, water equals Yerzara, air equals Bariah, and fire equals Azillah, led to the bringing up and education of Moses in the court of the king of animal man or animal men. So he's already there. He's saying that simply the people of Egypt were not spiritual, they were animal men. Thus, the awakening conscious learns the arts and science of natural world so that it may be acquainted with the ways of mundane life. However, having been lifted out of the vegetable slave state into the animal kingdom has its dangers. One of the many legends associated with this period of Moses' life describes how, with a remarkable intelligence, he soon excelled his Egyptian teachers. This created, as might be expected, some jealousy from his Egyptian or human animal level peers. Indeed, Balaam, the master magician, in parentheses here, later to be sent to curse the Israelites. You can see the book of Numbers in about this, whom legend places in Pharaoh's court at the time, recognizes Moses as a potential danger and warned Pharaoh. Fortunately, the archangel Gabriel aided Moses through a life or death test so that his precocious acts were seen as the random luck of a child. Here is the not unknown phenomenon of the supervision of heaven taking care of the embryo soul in an inherited hostile physical world. When Moses reached maturity, he moved easily, that is, as an educated alien in the world of the Egyptians. However, while he was involved in the second, what we call the animal man's life, he was never quite unaware of his own people's suffering or of the inner life enslaved behind the surface of natural processes. He began to ask questions. One day he saw an Egyptian strike an Israelite, and seeing a basic injustice killed the Egyptian. We are told in folktale by pronouncing the name of God, that is, I should not say that is, this is to say that he perceived the animal aspect of himself, assert his will over the psyche. You see what's going on here. He's explaining some deeper things here. He says aspect of himself, the animal aspect, the flesh, okay, his will over the psyche, eliminated in dominance by calling upon divine grace to kill the inferior desire. The call was immediately answered, and so the rabbis explained this was not murder, but the just death of an evil Egyptian, in order to demonstrate to Moses and the Israelites that is, to awakening individuality and the rest of the psyche, that the body dominance could be cast off. In other words, they're proving that simply he can do what's right. And we can too, if we choose to do that. Needless to say, the events soon became known throughout Israel, so that when Moses tried to prevent two Israelites from quarreling, next day he was asked if he intended to kill them. These Israelites, it is recorded, were Dathan, D-A-T-H-A-N, and Abiram, A-B-I-R-A-M, two of the most contentious Israelites in the community. They were to oppose him as a rebellious aspect of the psyche later in the desert. Seeing Kabbalistically, this incident shows this incident shows that while grace could aid the rooting out of evil, it left much to personal work in dealing with certain perverse aspects of the psyche that resisted spiritual progress. This was quite a different problem from the obvious external enemy of the Egyptian. Confronted by this inner opposition, as well as Pharaoh, who now sought his life, Moses fled. He became, like many of the later generation, a dropout. He was no longer interested in the ethereal glamour of Egypt, but he did not have the courage to take on Israel's problems. He therefore fled, according to Scripture, towards the land of Midian, a place of striving and judgment, where ruthless he could hide away from himself and his destiny. that is the end there. It sounds like this particular book here is almost a repetition of chapter 3 and 4. I don't know why. So this is the first time I read this particular book. So I read the chapter here earlier today, and it sounds just about a repetition of the other one. Even though he's speaking of a birth of consciousness in chapter 4, chapter 3 is talking about bondage of the body, which is Exodus 1. So there's two parts of this. So I'm going to stop here at this particular point, and we'll probably get, hopefully the next day or two, we'll do the rest. What happens, the section now becomes sleep and awakening. So let me explain what he means by sleep and awakening. All of us are really actually asleep spiritually, not aware of what's going on in our lives, not knowing, you see. And in fact, we act that way. We go through repetition, so to speak, even in our normal day-to-day life. We're not even aware sometimes of what's going on around us in a way that, what is taking place until something happens, which is planned in a way through the stars, through astrology. And then there's a possibility of awakening. It doesn't mean that there is awakening. It's just an opportunity for awakening in some ways. This again, I'm thinking in my own mind here is a way of God working into an individual life person. So, and again, I don't want to go too long here. We'll go into the next chapter the next day or two, which will be chapter 5. So thank you for listening. Appreciate you being here. And I will let you go here. Okay. Thank you. Again, my channel simply is Discerning What is True. And appreciate you being here. Wish you a good night and take care.